Good morning. Welcome to Rooted and Relevant. And I am glad that you are joining me again on this Thursday morning, a day before my bride's birthday, and looking forward to celebrating that with her tomorrow. And if you get a chance, do a shout out, say happy birthday to that wonderful lady that God allowed me to marry. Here is Ecclesiastes chapter 10, and the very end of the chapter is a very important teaching regarding foolishness. I have entitled this one "The Fool is Slave to the Immediate," and really the text, these last five verses are going to remind us that the fool doesn't live intentional and he doesn't plan. He doesn't act, he reacts. And so what happens is he becomes slave to the immediate. Whatever his flesh wants, he embraces it. Whatever comes his way in circumstances and situations, he falls prey to it. There's no, as I mentioned a few days ago, living in quadrant 2, where you have planned for things, you have put some preparation in place, whether it's facing temptation or whether it is planning for an expense that's going to surely come at some point. Whatever the planning is, the fool doesn't do that. He lives in the immediate and becomes slave to it. And so the text says in verse 15, the labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them, because he knoweth not how to go to the city. In other words, the fool lives in the world of catch up. He lives in the world of trying to catch up to life. He's always behind. He's never quite ahead of the game. He's always playing catch up. And that's an exhausting way to live. And God says here, he gets so exhausted because he doesn't have a plan that he doesn't even have the strength to do the basics. Here, the context is going to the city where they would get their daily provisions and necessary things. He doesn't have the energy to do it because he doesn't plan, and his immaturity requires him to chase and chase and chase to where he's exhausted, and he doesn't even do the basics. I am amazed in 35 years of counseling people what the lack of planning constitutes in consequences. And we live in a socialistic mindset that says my lack of planning constitutes an emergency on somebody else's part to come bail me out. But that's not biblical. Many times people are gracious and willing to do that, but I'm not sure they're helping individuals. Sometimes they need the consequence in order to learn the lesson. And so God says the foolish exhausts himself because he doesn't plan. Verse 16, woe to thee, O land, when the king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. It's really talking about a nation, a business, a church, a family suffers when there's immaturity leading it. He says there, woe to thee, O land, when the king is a child, when he just doesn't have direction, when he is enslaved. When you think of children, everything is in the immediate, whether it's how this affected them and they cry out, or how this affected them and they laugh. They don't plan. They don't know enough about life, and they don't have the faculties to actually plan for the next 5 minutes, let alone the next 5 days. Well, woe to any organization that has a leader that doesn't plan, that lives slave to the immediate. And I think we saw that in the last administration in America. I tracked their daily schedules to the point to where they stopped posting them because they were just living a game. They were just doing what they wanted, and the nation suffered greatly. One of the joys is watching this president, who is intentional. Whether you like everything about him or not, you have to be impressed and appreciate his work ethic. He is an Energizer bunny, and he's diligent, and he's intentional, and he plans. And that is exactly what verses 16 and 17 says. There's a contrast in the way a family functions with a leader who plans, as opposed to one that is just playing a game and everything just comes and goes and they just play catch up all the time. Verse 18 says, or verse 17 says, "Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness." Verse 16 says, "The princes eat in the morning." In other words, everything to them is about feeding their flesh, it's about enjoying something. Verse 17 reminds us that real leaders eat for strength to be able to accomplish what it is that they're intentionally pursuing, and not for drunkenness, not for personal gain or enjoyment. Verse 19, by the way, it's not saying that eating can't be enjoyable or fun. It's just simply saying there's a difference in whether you are doing things just to satisfy your flesh or you're doing things because it's important to do them. Verse number 18, "By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through." In other words, everything decays when you don't maintain it. I taught my boys all growing up, maintenance is cheaper than repairs. And so you have to stay ahead of things, not play catch up. Verse 19, "A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things." It is not saying that money satisfies. It just simply says money is necessary to live life. It's necessary to function. And so you're going to have to be wise and intentional, not only in making money, but how you use it for life. And then it says this very big warning in the last verse. It says, "Be careful of your thoughts. Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchambers. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter." In other words, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Our thoughts become actions, our actions become habits, our habits form our character, and that is what determines our future. And so it's reminding us to be very careful about how we think and what we think about. It reminds us here that we ought not look at people who are successful or people who are benefiting from hard work or intentional wise living when we just want everything to be handed to us or we want things to just happen. God warns us about foolishness and says the fool is the slave to the immediate. God says, you know what? I've given you my word. I've given you the designs. I've given you the Spirit of God to help you understand it and to be empowered to do it. So live wise and not foolish. I hope you have a great day. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. God bless.